Welcome back to Roster the People Summertime Edition. 32 teams in 32 days. As you can see from behind me, today we are going to do the Detroit Lions. Neil Smith, at Vishaal Gupta, back for a second day in a row. At Mike Burland. You know him, you love him. Talk to him in our Discord. He does more talking in that Discord than just about anybody I know. So if you got questions, hit Mike up because he'll answer them for you, especially if you're going through and getting draft questions. As always, this is your primer for the 2024 fantasy football season. This is all based on 12-team PPR redraft, 16-team draft, standard format at this point. You'll hear us reference a lot of rankings. Those rankings are typically coming from Fantasy Pros as they're a part of their ECR. I'm part of the ECR, so are a few other people on the site. We'll reference our own individual rankings as well, should there be a major discrepancy. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about the highs, the lows, the creamy middles, just getting you set up for your upcoming drafts. And you'll also hear us reference ADPs. Those are also courtesy of Fantasy Pros. And shout out to Fantasy Pros. We love working with you. Happy to be part of the affiliate program for another year. And with that, today is the 26th of July. So if we say anything that sounds a little dated or a little weird, that's why. So we record these in advance. There is a recap show that we will be doing tentatively for the 1st of September. We'll get that all out on social media once it's officially ready to go. And we're going to go through and update all the takes that we have done along the way and get everybody just prepped one last time. So there you go. That's the high level. That's what we're going to do here today. So let's just dive right in. Detroit Lions quarterback. It hasn't changed. It's Jared Goff. So once again, it's Jared Goff. It's like a bad penny. You just can't. It just keeps coming back. Just whatever you do. Longtime listeners will know that I am not a fan of Jared Goff. likely never will be. He's winning me over little by little, just little by little. I'm just glad we don't have to have the conversation anymore. It reminds me of the old Joe Flacco elite conversation. That's the Jared Goff conversation every year, and I'm like, no, stop it. Like it's. This year, just like the last couple of years, it's priced in. So he's opening as the QB 14, which in the ECR translates to 89 overall. That's too high. We've covered this on previous shows. The ECR is kind of polluted by a couple of years of data where quarterbacks have been getting inflated. I will tell you that is wrong. Don't buy into that. The public's actually closer. They've got him at 101. Just real quick for me, I liked it better when he was like a 12th round pick and not like what is that?
9th, I think.
No.
For ADP, ECR.
Yeah. For how about do it for ADP? That's like a 8th, 9th round pick. I guess that's okay, 9th. But it's still, that's a little, I could get Deshaun Watson in the 10th. You know what I mean? Like, do I really feel inclined? I mean, it's not crazy, but that's kind of my stance on the matter. It's like, it's not terrible, but it's also he had a good year last year. I was high on him last year, but I was getting a 3-4 round discount off of what they want this year. So, what do you guys think? Mike, we'll start with you. What do you think about Jared Goff?
Yeah, I think I'm right there with you. Like, this is generally where I'm going to start thinking about quarterback. Right? I think we all are. We're in the boat of we don't want to take one super early. We're going to start targeting one around 9, 10, 11. It seems a little high for Goff just because you do look at the numbers and his total finish, he was top 7 last year because of all the injuries. Points per game, he was more like QB 15. So he wasn't really a difference maker. Like Russell Wilson averaged 0.1 points less per game and things like that. So it's slightly high. And I get it, but also you got to know your league. He's going as QB 14. You could get him later if your league doesn't really go, start drafting backup quarterbacks in round 9, then you could probably get him a couple rounds later. So his stats in a dome are ridiculous the last 2 years. I wrote it down, and obviously most of them are coming at home because he plays in the dome, but 48 touchdowns in 21 games and averaging 275 yards passing. And Lions only play 3 outdoor games this year, Green Bay, Chicago, and I think San Francisco. So, and
that San Francisco game is going to be wild.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's the last game of the year, so we'll see. But Well, one other thing I like to look at sometimes schedules early on because 4 weeks in, your fantasy team looks different from what you drafted. The Lions, three of their first four games are at home. They get the Rams, Bucks, Cardinals, Seahawks. Like it's a pretty nice schedule. So you could get a nice starting 4 weeks from Goff, and then just kind of go from there and piece it together with a couple quarterbacks. So it feels slightly high, but I also don't hate it in this range.
I think this is a pretty good spot for him to go. I think it really depends on what your value is for quarterback in terms of do you put more importance on upside versus stability at that position when it comes to fantasy? Because you have guys like Kyler Murray and Jaden Daniels who are ranked higher than him at the quarterback position. Guys who obviously have significantly more upside than Goff does, but without a doubt, Goff has a significantly higher floor than those guys. So it really depends on what you're looking for at that position, at that spot in your draft. I think the biggest move the Lions made this offseason was keeping Ben Johnson. That's huge for Goff and that offense. I think there's no reason they can't run it back and put up the same kind of productivity because they have all their main receivers back, all their main running backs back. Everything is pretty much the same as last season for this offense. So you should expect to see relatively similar numbers. And like you guys said, he finished as a top 7 quarterback in fantasy. So I think getting him at 14, 15 range amongst quarterbacks is relatively solid. And I'd rather have the floor of Goff rather than try to swing at a guy like Jaden Daniels who's done well 1 year in college and now people are expecting him to have a big year in his first year in the NFL. That seems way too risky for me. So give me Goff over somebody like that.
Goff is the one that if he's my starter, okay, but I feel like I'm going to need to double tap quarterback pretty aggressively. You know what I mean? I don't want to have just Goff.
I feel like you could say that about a lot of the quarterbacks in that range too. Even if you're taking a guy like Tua or Jaden or any of those guys, you're not going to feel comfortable as those guys as your only guy going into the season. You're going to want to double up with a guy like Rodgers or Herbert, shortly after just to feel safe. So I don't know if that's necessarily just Goff. I think that'd be every quarterback in that range.
Yeah, and so that's the thing. But I do especially, Mike, you're correct. If you got to know your league. Because I play in a lot of leagues, and there are certain leagues where people are insane, and they just start taking 2 quarterbacks. Like, even if they got an early quarterback, they get another one. So you just got to know who you're playing against. And it's like when you're playing against people that's really good advice. Like, know what their tendencies are. It's hard when you're playing against people you don't know that well. Like if you're playing in a work league or something, like that gets tricky. So in general, I tend to wait. He's right on the cusp of where I'm willing to pull the trigger. But I do agree. Nice floor, upside's capped. But as someone who rostered him last year in a number of leagues, know that there will be days where you're going to want to pull your hair out. Like you're going to be watching the game and it's like he's wide open. Throw the ball, and he's just sitting there. Pat. And I'm like dead. And then it's just like, okay, like I guess, and it's a bad habit he's had his entire career. I remember we used to do it with the Rams. He does that, and it's just like, dude, read the field. He's gotten better about that since coming to Detroit, but it's still in there. And he's never been my favorite player, and I still have my own biases. I admit them. I admit I have biases against Goff. Like I still hold them from when we had to have the conversation for years. Is he elite? Is he going to be the next? Like they won a Super Bowl. Like, yeah, that's why. Yeah.
You're also going to get Lions are going to have games or a couple games where they rush for like 6 touchdowns and Goff throws for 200 yards and that's it.
Yeah, so 200 yards and 2 picks, and they win the game because the running backs go off.
Yeah,
and it's like that also happens. That's the other thing about Goff. That man has never seen double coverage that he wasn't willing to throw into.
Yeah,
and they make him pay for it some days. So just be aware that like there are warts with this, but if you could get him around 101, I like it a lot more than 89. I'll tell you that much. If we're talking about 89, it's like, dude, I'm still picking running backs and wide receivers at that point. And we'll figure out quarterback later. So that's the way it goes. Backups, Hendon Hooker, University of Tennessee product. We'll see. Maybe one day we'll get to see. But I'm not really worried about that. Love the dome stats, by the way. I'm glad somebody actually took the time to compile that. But all right, we've spent enough time on Jared Goff. It doesn't warrant it. Buyer beware, but you'll have some good days and some bad. Let's talk about running back. The running back situation for this team is wild. So it's the same two guys as last year. You've got Jahmyr Gibbs, who exploded onto the NFL scene last year, and then you have one of my favorite players historically, and that's not just because I grew up in Chicago, David Montgomery. So we're going to talk about these two in tandem because I really don't think you can talk about them independently. There is no third running back we will be discussing for the purposes of this. So really, what it is Jahmyr Gibbs. The hype train is off and rolling, baby. The train is pulling out of the station. He opens as the RB4, which would translate to 12 overall. By the way, as just a quick aside, for all my old heads out there who are old like me, who've been doing this for a long time, the world done changed, guys. the world be different, and it's scary. The fact that he's the RB4 and that's 12 overall, the world is scary. That is not the world I remember. Anyway, back to it. His ADP is 13. Also, as an aside, to all my old head, that the world be different, yo. that is not how that used to work. David Montgomery opens as the RB21, 69 overall, nice, and his ADP is 64. Okay, let's talk about it that way. That's not that crazy considering you've got a quality 1A. I don't want to call it 1-2. It's 1A, 1B type of situation here. I'll get into my thoughts, but let's start with you, Mike. What do you think about how this breaks down as an opener?
Yeah, love Montgomery still. We loved him last year. I think he's going slightly higher than last year. Still love him. I think his floor, if healthy, is right around that RB20 at worst. And I think just like last year, I think he was top 15, maybe top 12 sneaking in there. So he's going to get 15 carries a game. He's going to have just as good of an opportunity as anyone else in the entire NFL to score 10 plus touchdowns. And we've seen it back-to-back years with two different players for the Lions. So love him. Gibbs. Yeah, I mean, we were trying to throw it out there and figure out, is there ever been a running back who's not even maybe going to lead the team in carries as a first-round pick in fantasy? Maybe if someone's listening knows, and they can throw it in the comments, that'd be good. It's scary, and I don't know, how much more rushing production do we expect? He averaged about 12 carries a game. He had 10 total touchdowns. Yeah, I think it's going to have to come to the passing game, which it definitely could. He could catch 15 more passes. And then we're talking about, okay, now I can potentially see it. But, you had 1,200 yards, over 1,250 yards, 11 touchdowns. I don't see his rushing going that much higher. So it's going to have to be 15, 20 more catches. I get the upside there if he does get hurt. Or if Montgomery gets hurt, there's that upside, but you can't bank on that with your first round pick. I don't hate it, especially because we talked about it in earlier videos. Once you get outside of the first couple picks in the second round, it starts getting a little ugly for early second, mid-second round picks. So that's maybe why he's a little bit up.
Is rough.
Yeah, so that could be a part of the reason why he's boosted up. But it's just know Montgomery's going to have, if healthy, 225 carries, and probably going to be the goal line guy. Now, they did start to use Gibbs kind of equally the second half of the year. I think I saw a stat. I forget the week range, but they had the same amount of rushes inside the 5, I think. But in the playoffs, it was all Montgomery. There was eight rushes inside the 5 to 0 for Gibbs. So, yeah, it's just know that Montgomery's there and not going away, and you could get some frustrating games from Gibbs.
Yeah, super interesting with Gibbs. First round feels definitely high, but amongst running backs, it definitely feels like there's a pretty big drop off right around where he's going at number 4 overall amongst running backs. Because once you get to around 7 or 8, you're talking about guys like Etienne, Kyron Williams, Pacheco, Achane, Rachaad White. That's a really big drop off in terms of guys you feel comfortable about going into the season as your RB1. So you might not want to take Gibbs at 12, but if you wait and you skip over him, you wait till the end of round 2 or end of round 3 or whatever it is, you're looking at a really, really big drop off after some of those top 5 or 6 guys go. So it's do you pull the trigger on Gibbs there, or do you wait and take a risk? So I think that's really a big question that you have to ask yourself, maybe you will feel comfortable taking Taylor or Barkley if they're still there. But if those guys are gone and you're sitting at the end of round one, early round two, and it's really just Gibbs, ETN, and Kyron Williams and some other guys, are you really going to feel comfortable passing there and waiting another round or two to take your RB1? So it's really a question of resource management. I feel like depending on where you're picking and who's available. So even though it's rich, it might just have to be a risk you have to take if you want to feel comfortable about who you have going into the season as RB1. And I think to Mike's point about increased target load, I think that's definitely very possible this season. Josh Reynolds is gone along with his 60-some targets that went to Denver. Detroit didn't really bring anyone in to replace that, so that target distribution is going to have to be split up amongst guys who are already there. I think you'll see Jameson Williams get a bunch of that, but I think Gibbs is going to get a decent chunk of that as well. So I definitely think it's possible that you see a bigger target share for him this season.
I think it's possible, and so I'll get into my thoughts on this as I kind of teased. The Gibbs thing by itself, I get how we've arrived here because you've both articulated it quite well. There's a significant drop as we start getting into running back this year. The tiers in running back are kind of weird.
Yeah.
Where it's like if you're going by tiers, Gibbs is kind of the very last guy in tier 1. And then everybody else after that, you start getting into weird problems. And we were talking about this before the show. Mike referenced it. Has there ever been a guy who might not even lead the team in carries, who was a first-round pick at the running back position for fantasy? I've been playing this game since 2005, and I've been an analyst for 8 years. And I couldn't think of one. And I was like, I got to have to go through my notes. I got to go through like my historical notes to figure that out. So yes, if somebody in the comments knows, let me know. And I might interview you for a job. But we'll see. We'll see. I can't promise you that. We'll see. We'll see. But I am interested in that if someone does have that information. But it's something to consider. That it's a really weird scenario, but I do understand how we've arrived here. And I think you nailed it, Vishaal. It's the targets. It's the targets. It's the sauce for running backs is opportunities, which is targets plus red zone work, ultimately. Like, that's really what it is. And if Gibbs is going to get a lot of the red zone work and the majority of the targets, that's how we've arrived here. And I get why we've projected that way. I understand it. My concern is this. The old adage is you can't win your fantasy league in the first 2 rounds, but you 100% can lose. And this feels like that to me, where it's like, I don't think I want to do that because there are still really good wide receivers that are available at this point in time. And I would like to have them. And it's like, I'm willing, if there are still some decent wide receiver options, given just how the board works, I'm more inclined to just take one of the wide receivers and then I will live my life.
Are you going to be comfortable with Rachaad White as your RB1? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes? All right. If you could answer yes to that question, then you are good to skip on Gibbs.
Yep.
For somebody like me who can't say yes to that question, I don't know if I'm going to be able to pass on.
I am fine. I live this life, Vishaal. I'll tell you right now, I am a Rachaad White truther.
Okay.
So you are talking to the wrong guy.
I can't wait for the Tampa Bay episode for this to come out. I'm going to be on the center watching that one.
Yeah, we're going to talk about how I am undeterred in my love for Rachaad White, and I am not scared at all by what they've done there. I am not worried about it. Y'all can fight me if you want. I'm willing to die on this hill. So I've picked my hill. So it's like, I know I could be wrong. I get it. But my thing is, I agree with that. That you picked the right name for the purpose of this discussion, because I do concede there's some risk associated with this. But my argument, there's risk both ways, because if he flames out, you're done. And it's just like there's very little coming back from this if you do it. So you got to be committed to this idea. This is an interesting draft this year when it comes to the top end of running back, because you got to make some hard choices.
Yeah.
Where it's like, whereas to me, it's like I would almost rather live my life with wide receiver, and then I will live with Rachaad White and Joe Mixon or whatever that comp will be for RB1 and RB2. It's like, I'll live it. I'll deal with it. But your point is well taken, that if you don't want to live that life, with Rashad White and whoever else, give Gibbs a long look because there is a decent chance that this doesn't bite you in the you-know-what. The other reason that scares me is the David Montgomery thing. Last year, David Montgomery was the steal of a century. We covered that ad nauseum. That David Montgomery was a heist that was happening where people are like, oh, so he's just dead? No, he's not dead. This year, he's 2 rounds higher than what he was last year. And my argument is, it's still worth it. You still haven't priced me out. Because I don't know what David Montgomery has done to earn this disrespect by the Bears front office, by the fantasy community, by just everyone in general. Does David Montgomery come into the office every day and microwave fish in the microwave? Is that what it is? Does he have bad breath? Does he fart in the bullpen? Like, I don't get it. Like, I don't understand like what he has done. Is David Montgomery at the Christmas party hitting on people's wives? I just don't get it. Like, what has this man done besides show up and kick ass and take names, and they still disrespect him? Because I think he's going to lead this team in carries again. I think he's still going to be very involved in the red zone. And it's not like he was slowing down last year and suddenly looked like he was falling apart. I don't get it. It's a 6th round pick. I am more than happy to have David Montgomery be my RB2 as a 6th round pick. Am I insane?
Yeah.
Have I lost my mind? Please tell me. I'm more than willing to be told I've lost my mind on this. Mike.
No. Okay. No. I already said it. I love the value. Not to mention, we're talking about Jahmyr Gibbs, the other Lions running back, as a 1st round pick. What if he gets hurt? Where does Montgomery go? Like the upside, like you already get a probably top 20 running back at worst floor, with the upside to just destroy if Gibbs gets hurt. So yeah, I'm in on.
You got to be somebody special to where you're right next to James Conner in the fantasy rankings. You know what I mean? And Conner has that job all to himself, effectively, and Montgomery is still right there. And I'm like, something is not right with how we're doing this. Something is wrong. I don't know what exactly it is, but yeah, if you're telling me that I could have David Montgomery as my 6th player off the board, or it'd be 5th player, even that it's 5th player. Excuse me. He'd be 6 because it'd be 60 is 5th round. So yeah, he'd be my 6th player off the board. I'm great with that. I got no issues. I love my life because I agree with you, Mike. The upside is such that if anything happens to Gibbs, I don't know. Vishaal, are we insane? You want to talk some sanity into us, or you want to help us out?
I'm totally in agreement on this one. Other guys going in the same range as him: Zamir White, Tony Pollard, Najee Harris. If you're telling me you could rather have David Montgomery over those guys, that's so easy. That's
Gross.
just such an easy. He's miles better than any of those guys coming in around the same area as him.
Oh, I want to throw up in my mouth a little bit at that list. Oh, that list is. Those guys are fine, but do not compare them.
I totally still vomit there too. So I mean, you got to take David Montgomery there. Great value.
Not compare the disrespect to David Montgomery.
I'm going to throw the same name in there. I have to do it. He fits in that category. Yeah, Montgomery, great value at around RB20, 6th round. Have to do it.
The disrespect to David Montgomery continues. That is just disgusting. Anyway, all right, let's palate cleanse. Let's talk about something that's not as insulting. Go ahead.
Real quick. One last thing on Gibbs. We talked about potential more targets and receptions. He also only averaged 6.1 yards per reception. Yeah. Generally, good receiving backs are closer to 8.5 or north of that. So he could only maybe get 10 more and then get closer to that number and still, give you good receiving production. So I do see the path, but yeah, it's scary.
It is the downside is what scares me, but I'm usually, the Rashad White thing aside, I'm usually pretty conservative. Let's talk about wide receiver, because wide receiver is getting kind of interesting. And this one I don't have any issues with. First out of the gate, I'm on Ross St. Brown, the sun god. You know him, you love him. PPR monster, just target machine. I don't see much changing with that. He opens in the ECR as the wide receiver 3. That would translate to 4 overall. His ADP is 8. Yeah, I have very little to say about that. That sounds about right to me. That sounds about where you should be going.
There's to me, there's an elite 8 players this year that I want to walk away with in every draft, and he's right in that list. And honestly, you can even start talking about him after CMC, Tyreek, and Lamb go. I don't even mind you start talking about Amon-Ra there. So like he only had one game under 10 points last year. Like that's
he got
insane.
nicked up in that game.
Yeah, it's
I remember that
insane.
game.
Like even the top receivers always have 3 or 4. Like
No, he's a machine. The
Yeah.
man's a machine. It's incredible. Vishaal, anything?
Yeah, no, the question isn't is he a first round? It's where in the first round
Yeah.
do you take him? That's the only question. So yeah, totally in agreement.
Yeah, very little analysis. Amon-Ra St. Brown, good at football. There it is. What's more debatable is Jameson Williams, who folks with longer memory will remember that Williams has been in the league for a couple of years now, but doesn't feel like it because he got suspended for gambling. So he kind of had a lost season last year, but he started coming on towards the end, and you started to see why he was drafted where he was. And folks with a longer memory will remember him from college, where he was devastating to opposing defenses. He was really hard to deal with when you're dealing with kids, not professionals. You know what I mean? Even pros are struggling because you just can't really teach people to be that tall and that fast with that kind of vertical. Like you can either do that or you can't. I can't teach you to do that. But this year it's interesting. He opens as the wide receiver 50, which would translate to 125 overall. So that's the expert consensus. And then you'll start to notice something. His ADP is 111, and it's July. And we haven't even got all the way through training camp. He's going to play the preseason, so they say. I feel like this is one where it's 111 now. I feel like that's coming up. So what do you guys think? Excited for Jameson? Not excited? Scared? What do we think?
I'll let Vishaal go first.
I would be excited. I think he's going right around where you can start taking some flyers and start looking for some upside. Based on some of the other guys who are going in that range, I would much rather take Jameson Williams than a guy like Tyler Lockett or Roma Dunze or Jacoby Myers. I mean, why? Those guys are fine. Those guys are guys you would feel more comfortable if you have to plug them in any given week, but they don't have nearly the upside that Jameson Williams had. Like I mentioned earlier, those Josh Reynolds targets have to go somewhere. I would expect maybe a majority of them to go to Jameson Williams if he continues to progress, if he's able to become that guy that they traded up for in the first round. I think he is. If he can do that, then you have to start feeding him and start giving him more targets and hope he produces it. And if he can, he's going to be well worth it, and he's going to end up being, I don't know, a top 6, 7 round guy going into next year's drafts. So
yeah,
I think it's totally worth it in this range.
9th round pick is what it would translate to. 10th if you go by his actual ranking, but by ADP, 9th round pick. So, Mike, 9th round pick for Jameson Williams. I can see the face you're making. It tells me
It's
might not.
like it's right on the border. It's right on the border. Like, and if it does creep up, I think I'm out. I get the opportunities there because they need. I mean, at best he's the third, targeted player on this team, right? Like he's not going to St. Brown, obviously, and then Laporta is probably going to out-target him as well. So, he could be the wide receiver too. I just wish we've seen something from Jameson Williams. I know we had the redshirt freshman year or rookie year because he tore his ACL in the championship game, and
basically got another redshirt year because of the gambling suspension, which is unfortunate.
But he was starting from week 7 on. We never saw that. We saw a couple moments. We never saw that game where it's like, yes, this is the Jameson Williams that, why he was drafted. And a lot of people thought maybe even the best receiver in that class. I don't hate it. It's just like, man, what are you going to do when you're 3 weeks in and he's still getting only 4 targets a game? You're probably going to just cut him. And we're talking about a 9th round pick. Maybe an 8th round pick. I mean, you might not cut him because you invested so much.
That's what I was saying. You probably won't cut him, but you will be swearing.
Yeah, because, I get taking him over guys like, Cortland Sutton, Lockett, and those guys. But, there's some of those second-tier rookies that are close-ish to his range, McConkey, Keon Coleman, Brian Thomas.
I don't want to do the Chargers show already with you. I already know. No. I already know how this goes, and I'm already dreading it. I hate that show every year.
Yeah, but even JSN, who's I think he's decently higher. He's like 8, 9
JSN
picks
is in the
higher, but
neighborhood.
yeah,
We'll
and
see.
yeah, it's just man, if he just comes out and it's just like yeah, he's out there all the time, but he's getting 4 targets, 5 targets a game, and you really need that big play, and it's like, well, damn, what do I do with Jameson Williams? A guy that I took, especially if he creeps higher. I think I'm just out. It's right on the border of where I would take him.
He's going to be the top end. If you're going to take him at 111, he's the top end of your bench. So you are going to be expecting to get something from him. You will be playing him at certain points throughout the year. It's unavoidable. You will have to. So here's what I would tell people. And I hate to hedge like this, but I'm serious. This comes down to roster construction. If you have like high floor, but low ceiling starters, this becomes more attractive to me. Like if I can try to give you some examples. Like if your team, you're in the 9th rounds, you have 8 players. If the way your team has been working is I have a lot of floor, but not a lot of ceiling, so I feel good that my team's going to produce, but I'm capped in terms of what I think my actual my team's going to do good every week. It's going to be solid, but I need something that's going to push me over the edge. That's when I start looking at things like this.
Yeah, if you have Christian Kirk and Deontay Johnson and those guys.
And that's the way it's been and my running backs are like Joe Mixon and like I've got floor guys. Like they're guys that will come out every week and they will give me solid point totals. But I'm playing against a team where I need to score 200 points. But I'm never going to score 200 points with my current roster. That's when you start looking at things like Jameson Williams, where it's like, no, I need that thing that could be a catalyst that could blow up, and then suddenly I've got lightning in a bottle, and I can use him as a flex regularly. If my team works the other way, and I've got a lot of volatility, and the highs are really high, but the lows are really low, I would like Jacoby Myers, please. Or I would like, you know what I mean? Like I would like a Cortland Sutton, where it's like I just need somebody who's going to get me something, so that I can like keep it going. I can just have some level of sanity. That's the way I look at this. So it just depends on how your draft has been going. But I will also concede there's a lot of vacated targets on this team, and they're not all going to go to Gibbs and Laporta. And you can't really give Amon-Ra anymore without killing him.
No.
Like he'll be dead if you tried. You just can't.
Yeah.
It's literally that. He's already at like the apex of what a human being could do. So there's a lot of vacated targets, and they got to go somewhere. And maybe some goes to Gibbs, maybe some goes to Laporta. But I think a lot of it's going to go to Jalen Williams, because we're going to get through the last of these guys here in a second. Or Jalen, I'm sorry, I said Jalen. Jameson Williams. Because we're going to go through the rest of it, and the rest of it is not as sexy.
Like Vishaal mentioned earlier, like this was a deep wide receiver draft, and they did not bring anyone. Free agency draft, no one, not even a 3rd, 4th round pick. So
no,
that probably means they believe in him.
At the end of last year, I expect Jameson Williams to take that leap the next year. And subtext, you better, or you're not going to be playing for me no more, because we've seen how Dan Campbell works. Like,
and it's
you enjoy it more than 1 or 2 times, you're gone. Like he just goes and gets somebody else, and the front office is just more than fine with letting Can Damble run the team that way.
And this is a Super Bowl team, like if they didn't believe in Jameson, they would have brought someone else in. So
they had ample opportunities.
Right? I mean, they could have done that pretty easily. I don't think that would have cost them too much. They didn't do that. So
no, they paid Denver paid Josh Reynolds a ham sandwich. Like they're not paying him anything. It's like a 1-year nothing deal. So they could have got Josh Reynolds for nothing. Like if they really wanted to, they could have figured out the money and paid and tried to make a push for T. Higgins or something. You know what I mean? Like that's probably a little bit too out of their price range. But like there were other guys that were available that don't have T. Higgins' skill set and talent, but you could have got that done. And so Jameson Williams is going to be one of those ones where I'll put it to you this way: it's going to come down to roster construction. It's priced in cheap now. If this pans out, you're talking about a 5th round pick next year. And that's just the way the news goes. So there is a lot of upside. Just prepare yourself for the idea that if this doesn't happen quickly, it might not happen, and you might be living in the world Mike is describing, where you're sitting there like, well, I can't cut him because I invested too much, and then you wait too long, and then you're mad, and then it turns into one of those. So you just gotta know what you're getting into with Jameson Williams. The upside is there, but there is a significant potential fail point with this. But if it pays you out, oh boy, are you going to be happy. It'll pay you out in a real way, like what Vishaal is talking about. Like, you will love your life. And you'll have people coming to you like, I'd try to trade for Jameson Williams. You're going to be sitting there like, what do you got? You got something good? It's going to be something like that. So other names on this team in the wide receiver room, Khalif Raymond, ho-hum, we've seen it. It's fine. It's fine. He can be on the team. It's fine. It's not something you're going to worry about. And then favorite of the show. I wish Jason was here. DPJ, Donovan Peoples-Jones. I love Donovan Peoples-Jones. I do. I'm sorry. I just love Donovan Peoples-Jones. I know it's not a sexy thing. He has no ADP. It's not something you would draft. I just like that he's on that team because I think he's better than he gets credit for. That's all. That's all it is. And I get why they did this the way that they did. Because it's like, if something would happen to Amon-Ra St. Brown, we're going to put Khalif Raymond out there. Because if you kind of squint, like really squint, and you stand like 20 yards away, kind of similar thing. Donovan Peoples-Jones is kind of the same thing. If you take Jameson Williams and you squint really hard, it's like, it's Donovan Peoples-Jones. That's what it is. They're inferior versions of what they already have. I think I get what they're thinking there. So I get it. These things make more sense from a real football standpoint than anything fantasy related. You're not drafting any of these guys.
No.
Last topic, Lions related, because this is the other big one. Sam Laporta. Oh my God. Hold on to your butts, because we got to talk about Sam Laporta, and I've never been happier that Jason's not here. Because this would take a half hour if Jason was here, and we don't have time for that. But Laporta opens as the tight end 1. You heard me. Opens as the tight end 1. Travis Kelce would like a word. Translates to 26 overall in the ECR. His ADP is 27. I will roster 0 Sam Laporta. That's my actual analysis. We did it.
Yep. I'm right there with you. I think I mentioned it. I forget who we were talking about, but to me, there's that bucket of 4 in Kelce, Laporta, McBride, and Andrews. And if you do want to take a top tight end, just take the last one of those guys because they're going 2 rounds later. Than McBride and Andrews are going 2 rounds later than Laporta. And
that was the Ravens show.
Yeah.
I remember this conversation now.
And it's like they have just as good of a chance to be the tight end 1 as Laporta does. He's awesome. He's amazing. Rookie being tight end 1 last year. It was tight end 1, but it wasn't tight end 1 like Kelce or Andrews the last 5-6 years. It was a down year for the tight end 1 in fantasy. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, way too high for any tight end. This goes back against a roster construction that Neil was talking about earlier. You're talking about round 3 here. You can't be passing up running backs and wide receivers to be taking a tight end. Your roster is not going to be in good enough shape by the end of it to justify that. So, yeah, you just can't do that. You have to be taking running backs and wide receivers there.
The penalty for doing that will be so severe. You'll figure it out in week 5. You'll understand what I mean, but when you're staring
at
the roster,
0-4 at that point, and it'll be too late anyway. So
that's true. There's a very good chance of that happening. I stand by my statement of you can't lose your draft early like that. You can't win your draft early like that, but you can lose, and this is a good way to do that. Where in the 3rd round you're taking a tight end, like
we're not even saying like he's going to do worse than if he does exactly what he did last year, you're still going to be disappointed.
That's what I mean. Like,
yeah,
you're projecting him to improve to such a level that I'm like, okay, so what's got to happen for that to be the case? Jahmyr Gibbs gets locked in a closet.
Your league scoring to 1.5 points per reception for tight end. That's like the only way it works.
The tight end premium scoring?
Yeah.
Remind me to quit that league if I'm playing in it. Remind me to absolutely not renew for the next year because I have no interest in playing with you. But yeah, like what would need to happen for Sam Laporta to go up past what he was already doing? Jahmyr Gibbs gets locked in a closet for like 3 weeks. Like what would realistically need to occur? Like some sort of injury is all I could think of. There would need to be some kind of injury to something else on this team. and Laporta has to take on an expanded role, and let's say he did and it worked, okay, you're still probably going to be disappointed. Like I just don't see any universe where this is a good idea. And that's what I'm saying. I just will roster no Sam Laporta. This is one where in the third round, if someone does this, I'm going to be sitting in my living room like because that's one more running back and wide receiver available for me to look at.
Yeah.
Like, good. Happening. Thank you. Like, yeah. I do the same thing when I see people take a quarterback, except instead of this, I do the cabbage patch. So that's the only difference. That's all. We could go through old dance moves from the 90s and early 2000s, Vishaal. I have plenty. Like, I know you were probably born in like 1995. What?
Yeah. I know you were probably. I'm not going to know.
I was going to say I know you were probably born in like 1995 and have no idea what I'm talking about. But like that's
nope.
Yeah. There you go. Mike, the kids today, they don't know what the cabbage patch is. They don't know what they don't know what the in living cover, they don't know what in living color was. They don't know what the dancers were called. They don't know any of this. Like, I was having this conversation with somebody I work with, and it's like they don't know who the crypt keeper was. Like, they don't know what any of this is. They have no idea what I'm talking about. And I've never felt more old than some of these conversations where I'm just like, whatever. I have no idea how to relate to you. They start talking to me about what TikTok is, and I'm like, I don't care. Like, I don't care. Like, we're gonna have to do some sort of like cultural knowledge exchange at some point with some of these people. Like it's kind of weird because they were trying to explain to me how Instagram works, and I'm like, I don't care. Like, this doesn't help me with anything. Like, anyway. Neil's trips down memory lane aside. Final thoughts on the Lions. Anybody have anything else to add?
Nah, I think we hit everything for the Lions. It'll be good. I mean, if you're taking Lions, it's not gonna destroy you, or I don't think in any way, and it has upside of winning you some leagues. So unlike the Denver team we talked about yesterday, this is we
don't want to talk about the Denver team anymore. We covered that. I don't want to talk about that anymore. That's really depressing. No, I would just say on our way out, David Montgomery is still a value somehow. I don't know what more he needs to do, but okay. And I'm on Ross St. Brown. Those are the two that I'm actually excited about. I'll live if Jared Goff is my quarterback. I'll live if Jameson Williams is on my bench. Sam Laporta is the poison pill, though. That's the one that I'm like, are crazy. So that's really how I'd say we break it down. But it'll be. I agree with Vishaal. It'll be good. I'm more excited to actually see the real football Detroit Lions. You know what I mean? Like, and you don't say that very often in life if you're my age, because they've just failed so much. But it is going to be exciting to see them see if they can actually take the next step and be a real team, like, consistently, and not just a flash in the pan. So it'll be pretty interesting. But with that, tune in tomorrow, because we will be talking about. I'm going to see if I can get out of tomorrow's show. I gotta see if Steve will cover for me, because tomorrow you're gonna in the listener world tune in and hear us talk about the Green Bay Packers. V, I know you're not going to want to be part of that show either. No. We're going to find coverage for that. Maybe Jason and Steve can do it. I'm not interested in doing that show. I'm going to have a hard time being positive about any of that. But yeah, tune in for the Packers. But until then, keep up the nonsense.
I'm Tim Kitzer from NBA Jam and NFL Blitz, and you can find all the guys at ImportantNonsense.com. Kaboom!